Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Ignition Time. We know that the entire $3.5 trillion stimulus package is in a lot of trouble. In fact, Joe Manchin, the conservative Democrat from West Virginia, wants to limit federal spending. Well, folks, the hypocrisy could not be more evident. West Virginia, the state of Senator Joe Manchin, gets more than its fair share. In fact, it is highly dependent on the federal government. In fact, let's show you this article on your screen that was written by Joe Manchin, where he said why I won't support spending another $3.5 trillion. And he wrote, I quote, by significantly reducing the size of any possible reconciliation bill to only what America can afford and needs to spend, we can and will build back a better and stronger nation for all our families. And by the way, in the past 48 hours, Joe Manchin said that he would allow the United States to spend $1.5 trillion on top of the $1 trillion infrastructure package. But back in January, he had actually said spend $2, $3, $4 trillion over a 10-year period on infrastructure. In fact, as he was explaining his resistance to a larger budget package, Manchin also said this: I cannot accept our economy, or basically our society, moving toward an entitlement mentality. Well, folks, I have news for you. This is a fact, okay? He represents West Virginia, a state that gets more from the federal government than it gives in tax receipts. And this is a quote directly from the Washington Post article. Manchin talks like a maker. His state is a taker. I want you folks to actually really think about this. According to a 2021 report from SUNY's Rockefeller Institute of Government, in 2019, West Virginia received $2.5 in federal spending for every dollar of federal taxes its taxpayer paid. In fact, every year, West Virginia is on a list of states that take more money from the federal government than they put in. Now, there are reasons for this. Overall deficit spending makes it possible for many states to actually get more money than they give. But the fact is, West Virginia takes more money from the federal government than it gives. Now, I want our viewers and subscribers to know that Joe Manchin's vote in the United States Senate is absolutely crucial for the Democrats, because without his votes, they cannot get anything done. Now, West Virginia's governor and other U.S. senators are Republicans. And by the way, Donald Trump won the state by a huge margin in 2020. So I want to be clear that this is primarily a Republican state. But this is very interesting that Joe Manchin would single-handedly try and sabotage the entire $3.5 trillion stimulus package. It's a very interesting thing to see. Now, I'll also quote again from this article from the Washington Post. But because Manchin's is a taker state, it's hard not to see his budget stance as a pose. His recent statements do not acknowledge that his state is being carried to a degree by some of the richer states, Connecticut, New Jersey, whose mostly Democratic-leaning voters are inclined to a more robust budget. It's true that as a senator, he's a trustee for the fiscal decision-making of the whole nation, but Manchin, who speaks specifically for West Virginia's voters, decries deficits while his constituents benefit from them. I'll also continue quoting from the article. Without a willingness to publicly address this disconnect, Manchin's position suggests that West Virginians, especially, deserve the government largesse, in other words, deserve all the money from the federal government they receive, while the same largesse, the same generosity, is not deserved elsewhere. He scrambles the maker-taker debate that ramped up so dramatically during the last few presidencies. So I want our viewers and subscribers to know that Joe Manchin's state takes more money than it gives. And also that without his vote, the Democrats cannot get a single thing done. This actually puts the Democrats in a very unique position. And finally, I'll quote from the article. Manchin's statements are mostly consistent depending on your view. Maybe they are right, but philosophically, coming from a state like his, maybe his position is not coherent. Let me know what you think of these comments from Senator Joe Manchin. And by the way, a lot of the taker states, which tend to be red states, I'm not saying they're always red states, they essentially take more money from the federal government than they give. I'm not saying that this is good or bad. I'm saying that this is the reality of what is happening in our country, because a significant portion of the tax dollars for the federal government are indeed coming from blue states. Now, I want you to know that 1.8 million people reside in West Virginia. That's about half the population of Queens, New York. So you can start to see that this senator who has been elected by 1.8 million individuals, I mean, those who voted for him anyway, is essentially championing the cause of West Virginians, which is indeed impacting the rest of the country. I want our viewers and subscribers to really think about this and let me know in the comment section below what you think about what I consider to be the hypocrisy of the conservative Democrat from West Virginia, Joe Manchin, because this is not a black and white situation. We need the stimulus, and there are individuals in our country who are still struggling, who are still suffering as a direct result of the pandemic. This is not a simple situation. The truth has many, many shades of gray. And on the Ignition Time channel, I'll always share the truth wherever the truth might lead us. In fact, there are two senators. One is a conservative Democrat from West Virginia, Joe Manchin, who I covered in this episode of Ignition Time, and Senator Kristen Sinema, the Democrat from Arizona, who are single-handedly holding up the entire Democratic agenda and I believe will prevent the passage of the $3.5 trillion stimulus plan. I believe that it'll end up being approximately a $1.5, maybe $2 trillion plan, because the Democrats have no choice but to scramble and to try and combine the priorities of Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema. In fact, President Biden has been working hard to try and include Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema in the negotiations, and I know for a fact he has been reaching out to them directly. Let me know what you think about the hypocrisy of what is essentially a taker state like West Virginia. Again, I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but I'm saying that this is a fact that West Virginia receives more money from the federal government than it gives, and therefore it's called a taker state, and therefore the position of the conservative Democrat from West Virginia seems to be inconsistent with what his state, what his constituents are actually benefiting from relative to other states like Connecticut and New Jersey, which pay more money to the federal government than they actually receive. Please click the like button. Please click subscribe. Please enable notifications. Thank you so much for watching. I want you to know I greatly appreciate you. A lot of effort goes into the creation and the production of these videos. So please click the like button. Please click subscribe. Please enable notifications. Thank you so much for watching. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode of Ignition Time. Take care. Bye.